Hey everyone, Sam Brief here with the new Mental Game podcast. And today I've got Reed Myers, who just finished up his 4-year basketball career and academic career, graduating from Rice University. He was a D1 men's basketball hooper, which is really hard. But as Reed wrote in a column that he just penned for the Rice Thresher, the student newspaper at Rice, the harder thing that is nearly insurmountable for a lot of people is being an Asian American hooper. Reed's dad is from Kansas City. His mom is from Tokyo, Japanese American. And like his two sisters, he followed basketball. And early on, he was a stud. Started as a freshman on varsity down in Arizona, scored 12 points a game, won a state championship, was first team All-State, played 4 seasons, and by all accounts, his accolades, his athleticism, he should have been a D1 recruit. He should have had coaches lining up at the Myers household. But D3 coaches wouldn't even call him back. Scouts wrote that he was slow, unathletic, had no potential. He was falling into the stereotypes of an Asian American basketball player, for which there are very few examples. Of course, Jeremy Lin is the big shining example, but as Reed tells me in the pod, like, that hasn't really led to much. That was 11 years ago, and there isn't really the next Jeremy Lin yet. So Reed's column in the Rice Thresher, he says, quote, "I hope to be an example for future Asian American hoopers." That's the title, and it's a wonderful op-ed that I will link in the description. It's worth a read before you hop on with Reed, and that is coming in 3, 2, 1. Reed Myers hops on to the Mental Game podcast. He just graduated from Rice. He finished up his basketball career, and now he makes his debut on the pod. What's going on, Reed?
How you doing, Sam? Thank you so much for having me today.
Of course. I'm catching you pretty much on your way from Houston to Phoenix to London. So I appreciate you reserving a little time for me before you go drink some tea out east.
Of course. I appreciate you for having me. Thank you.
Of course, Reed. So I just want to start with where you are now mentally. You just graduated from Rice. Congratulations. Double major in psych and sports management. You finished your 4-year basketball career, a sport that you've been playing since you were like that big. And here you are. How do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's a lot of mixed emotions and feelings right now. I think graduating is also a time for me to be kind of a moment for reflection. So I was happy and I was content with my experiences and what I was able to achieve during my undergraduate years. So I was content with graduating, but obviously I was sad because a lot of my friends are going to different places around the world. Also, my teammates are going to different places, whether it is staying at Rice or playing elsewhere. So I was sad because, leaving that behind and missing those connections and relationships is going to be hard. But I know it's, the right time because it's the right time for me to take my next step in my own journey. So yeah, just a bunch of mixed feelings at the moment.
Hey, I've been there, right? I'm not that much older than you. I remember
Right.
that feeling of being like, oh man, this friend is going to New York. This friend is going
Yeah.
to Los Angeles, Israel. I'm like, oh God, I miss the days of everyone being on the same block. So
No,
I can
exactly.
relate, but an exciting time, Reed. And I'm excited to have you on and dive in to your journey, which is going to focus mostly around the op-ed you wrote in the Rice Thresher, the Rice University student newspaper, an op-ed about being an Asian American basketball player. And that's something you've been from a very young age. And I want to start with the basic premise of this op-ed, Reed. Why did you take the time to write it on your way out the door?
Yeah, so for me, it was kind of a twofold reason. So the first reason is I wanted to just kind of explain the Asian American basketball experience because, as I wrote in my paper, there's only the Division I men's basketball players, only 0.4% of them are of Asian descent. So I was like, this is an incredibly small percentage, and not everyone is familiar with the experiences that I've gone through. And so for that reason, I wanted to explain what I've had to go through because I realized that people just aren't familiar with it. And I wanted to kind of shed light into what it was like. And then the other reason was with my basketball journey ending at Rice and after graduation, I kind of wanted to use this time to also reflect on my own career and see, some of the obstacles, challenges that I've had to overcome, but also the successes. So those were the two reasons why I wanted to write this piece as my final piece during my undergraduate time at Rice.
A great motive, right? That number is crazy. 0.4%. That is
That's
such
crazy.
a minuscule number.
Yeah.
You write in the open of this column, quote, "The road to
Hmm.
being a Division I basketball player is hard, but it's even harder when you're an Asian American." Explain to us why.
Hmm. That percentage just shows why. There's just not many of us that make it to that level. And with so few people being at the Division I level, I think it also makes it harder for the next generation of basketball players who are Asian to kind of make it, because if coaches and recruiters, they see that there just aren't many people who look like them at that level, so they kind of automatically think that maybe they're not ready for it or they're not going to be able to compete. And so I think it's harder because people don't aren't going to be believing in you when they're looking at you, especially when you're in high school playing club basketball on the circuit. I think it's just you have to believe in yourself even greater, because other people around you aren't believing in you the same way, because no one else has really done it. And obviously, a big inspiration of mine was Jeremy Lin, because of his successes as an Asian American basketball player. And I've read many of his books and watched his movies and everything. So I remember he would always say that, his journey was also very difficult, to the point where, Division III coaches weren't even reaching out to him, even though he was the California Basketball Player of the Year and had these great milestones. So it's just, I think personally, with my experiences as well, I think it's more difficult for Asian Americans to get to that level.
Without being overly simplistic, there are some
Mhm.
crucial parallels between Jeremy Lin's story and your story, right? He was one of the best
Right.
players, the best player in California. You were
Mhm.
first team All-State. You scored 1,000 points. You won a state championship in Arizona.
Right.
You were a bona fide stud and the type of player who should have had Division I coaches knocking on your door from junior year.
Mhm.
But you wrote that you struggled, like Jeremy did, to even have
Mhm.
Division III coaches call you back. Take me to that moment of feeling that struggle and explain
Mhm.
to us what it felt like.
Yeah, it was honestly very almost like helpless, because I felt like I deserved at least to get a text back, a call back. And it was really, really frustrating, because I was just sending out email after email and text after text to these coaches at honestly all different levels, from Division I all the way to Division III. And so for those people not to like hit me back at least, and to have that happen to me, it was very frustrating, to say the least. And there are always these other players around me, and growing up here in Arizona, where I thought, the attention that they were getting, I deserved just the same amount. And so to see that happening to other players around me who I thought I was either equal or better than, it was a very frustrating time, to say the least.
So much of it starts with what the scouts say about you, right? And the
Hmm.
scouts were
Right.
labeling you as not quick, right? Not as
Right.
athletic, because that's a stereotype and you're just falling
Uh-huh.
into that. But
Right.
clearly you were quick. Clearly you were athletic. How did you
Hmm.
battle against those stereotypes?
Yeah, it was difficult, and again, it was frustrating. So
Yeah.
in high school growing up, and these local scouts would just come to these games, and I remember they wouldn't even like watch our games, because in Arizona, like the local scouts are pretty well known, and you know who they are when they come to watch your games. And I remember they would just like tell like other people around them in their circles, are like, yeah, the thing about Reed Myers, he's just not athletic enough, he's just not quick enough. And I was like, man, if you watch these games, like I'm guarding I'm guarding these great point guards who you say are going to be easy Division I players, and it's like I'm holding my own at the minimum. And so it was difficult to combat those stereotypes, because there's nothing you can really do, because I feel like what I was doing on the court was proving them wrong. But even then, it was like, no, like that stereotype was always still being thrown on me, the labels of just not being quick enough, not being fast enough. And it was frustrating.
I can't relate to that. And
Hmm.
to put myself in your shoes is so it like makes my head spin. It makes my stomach a little nauseous to think about being really talented. And it's not just talent, it's hard work, right? You don't
Hmm.
become
Right.
quick. You're not born quick. You have to
Hmm.
train yourself. And I know you did that throughout youth basketball in high school. you turned yourself into one of the top players in the state, and you're not getting the credit you deserve. Division III coaches weren't calling you back. That's extremely frustrating. I'm really curious how you addressed it with your family. You have a dad from Kansas City, a mom from Tokyo, you're Japanese American. How did you address it with your parents and also like individually with each of them?
Yeah, I mean, with them, they weren't athletes themselves, so they had never went through the recruiting process before. I have two older sisters who also played basketball. So one of them was a pretty good high school player, so she actually went through the recruiting process herself. But with me, it was, they were doing everything they could to help support me, especially my dad. He was doing everything he could on his side, whether it was, emailing coaches on his own and helping me make these highlight videos from my games. We would make them like just by ourselves, just cutting up the film from the games. So yeah, I mean, it was hard to address it with them because they also felt like, there's got to be a school out there that wants to take you, that it would be a good opportunity and the right fit, but it was just difficult to find it. So, I mean, having them in my corner and having them always support me, I mean, it was monumental for me because, it was difficult. It was hard for me to, kind of cope with it sometimes because it was just, as a high schooler, like, I felt like I just deserved more and I felt like I deserved some attention. So it was really helpful to have them in my corner. And obviously I wouldn't have made it without them.
You wrote in this op-ed about your mom's upbringing and how being from Japan, it's just not really a thing that much to have sports be the focal point of what you're doing, right? Every day you're waking up, you're practicing, you're going to games, like that's your life. You're trying to get a scholarship. What sort of learning curve was there with her?
Yeah, I mean, I also got kind of lucky because my two older sisters played basketball. So by the time it came for me to play basketball, it was kind of adjusted by then. But I think with her, she was just willing to let her kids follow what they loved. And that's what we love about her because, many times that's not the case with parents. They want to have kind of force whatever it is that they're passionate about onto their kids. But with her, she saw the love of basketball that we had. And so she was just willing to let us follow it and follow our dreams, no matter where that took us. But I mean, not to say that she didn't care about our education. Like we always had to make sure our homework was done right, done well, and make sure our grades were still top notch. But in terms of extracurriculars, she let us spend an excessive amount of time on basketball that I know a lot of other parents wouldn't have. So especially growing up in Japan, that just wasn't the case, especially a sport like basketball, which is growing now, thankfully. But like other sports like baseball and soccer were more popular. So it was honestly incredible to see her be so willing to let her kids play the sport of basketball.
And you've towed the line of student and athlete masterfully. I mean, I go to your Rice University bio, I see Commissioner USA Honors Roll, academic medal. I'm like, okay, this dude can hoop. He can also, you're graduating with honors. So congrats on that, Reed.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.
I mentioned Rice. There's clearly a jump. We're talking about, Division III coaches aren't calling you back, but I'm talking to you now. You're wearing a Rice University polo. You just graduated from a D1 men's basketball program. You played 4 seasons. How the heck did you get there?
Yeah, so after my freshman year in high school, I had a really good year that year. So I came in as a freshman, averaged around, 12, 13 points a game. I
want to stop you right there because for
Mm-hmm.
people who don't really understand the circuit of high school basketball in America, to be a freshman and play on varsity alone is impressive. To score 12, 13 points a game on a state championship team, yeah, that's really impressive. So you should have been a high-level recruit, but go on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, and by the end of my freshman year, I was really lucky to be surrounded by a lot of talented other players, so it made my job easy. So I was able to average like around 6 assists a game too. We were able to win the state championship that year, and I went to a small private Christian school that we had probably like 250 kids in our school, but that year we were in a division where we were playing against 3,000, 4,000 student high schools like every night. So it's kind of a mismatch, but we were really talented. So we were able to win it all in the end. And I was named the small school player of the year by our Arizona Republic, which is our newspaper here in Phoenix. And so I was one of 2 players from my high school to ever be named to that award, the other one being Kevin Coble, who actually went to Northwestern and was a really good player there. And so after,
I'm a cat.
Exactly.
I remember Kevin Coble. Go Cats. Have to sneak that in.
Of course. And so after that year, I had a really good freshman year. So I was able to hear from some coaches, mainly high academic schools. So I remember Cornell reached out to me, and then Rice also reached out to me. And so I ended up going to the elite camp of Rice's in the summer and visited their campus. And during the time, their head coach was Mike Rhodes, who ended up going to VCU. Now he's at Penn State. But at the time, the assistant coach was Scott Para. And so he was kind of a person that we were talking to during that year. And after that elite camp, we just kind of stayed in contact with Rice. And I loved the university. I loved the campus. It was gorgeous, even when I was 15 years old. And when Mike Rose went to go to VCU, Scott Para ended up being promoted to the head coach. So I was like, oh, that's perfect, So I was able to stay in contact with him throughout the years. And I actually had kind of a big hurdle in my recruitment. In my junior year, I actually ended up tearing my ACL in the summer during a tournament. So that was, a difficult process for me to deal with. But I was able to stay in contact with Rice throughout those whole years. And by the time I was a senior, they didn't have a scholarship position open, which I understood, but they mentioned that they had a preferred walk-on position that they had available on their team, and they thought I'd be a really good fit, culture-wise and basketball-wise, and that they were looking for a point guard to kind of help with their scout team, and they just thought it'd be a good fit. And I was like, I love Rice. It was one of the only schools that I visited in high school, and so I decided, it has everything that I want. It has, elite academics and Division I basketball experience that I've always been working towards growing up. And even though it wasn't a scholarship like I always dreamt of, it was still a position that I wanted to be in. So with those two goals in mind, I was able to combine them by going to Rice. And, I'm really, really glad I did, because I loved my experience there.
Yeah, that was your freshman mindset was, this is a perfect fit for me. It's got what I want. Flashing forward 4 years, you allude to it. You're happy, of course. How did it all work out being at Rice?
Yeah, it was good. A walk-on position is, as many people maybe aren't familiar with, it's still, it's not on scholarship. You're not on a scholarship there, and you're treated like everyone else is treated like on the team. And I think with me, I really enjoyed my experience at Rice, especially with basketball. We were able to travel to some places around the world that I would have never been able to travel to. Like my freshman year, my freshman year in college, we had a tournament in the Bahamas. And so that was like one of the most fun times we've had there, being able to play basketball in this, really, really nice resort right on the beach. It was amazing. And then also I was able to really make some great friendships and relationships with my teammates. And so I was lucky to play with some really good players. My freshman year, we had Trey Murphy, who's now on the Pelicans. We would actually room together on the road trips because we snored together.
And then we snore together?
Yeah, we snore together. So
that's a thing. Like when the coaches are making the room assignments, they're like, "Oh, this dude's a snorer. This dude is too. So let's put them together."
Well, it got to the midpoint in the season, and we were rooming with different people at the time, and our roommates were complaining that we were keeping them up with our snoring. So then they just paired us together mid-season. And honestly, I don't even remember Trey snoring once. Maybe I was just out snoring him. But so yeah, that's how it came. That's how it came to be.
That's actually really smart by the coaches, because a team that is sleepy because they're with a snorer and they themselves are not a snorer is going to be a more ineffective team. So good on them. Good on them.
All right. Yeah. So, with those, relationships, and one of my best friends, still to this day, we actually roomed together my freshman year, as Max Fiedler, who's one of the best passing big men in college basketball, and he's going to play his 5th year at Rice. So, yeah, I can't thank the Rice program enough for everything that they've given me, because I was honestly just so happy with being able to be a Division I basketball player, to have those experiences, to be, just taken to all these places around the world. It was just amazing that, I can't thank them enough, because they gave me so many opportunities, so many great experiences and memories that I'm going to take with me for the rest of my life.
It's an amazing story, Reed, and I'm really happy for you. It worked out so well. To go back for a moment to the column, you did write about your career at Rice. You said, during my career at Rice, I remember seeing all the teams we played against, and it became obvious I was one of the only players of Asian descent. It's honestly a crazy feeling going into opposing arenas for 4 years and never seeing anyone who looks like you on the court. What does that feel like?
Yeah, honestly, the more you experience it, the more you kind of realize, I guess, because your freshman year, you're kind of naive. You don't really know what to expect. But then after, when I was kind of writing this and I was thinking back to my time playing at Rice, I mean, we played, 30 plus games a year. So, I mean, that's in 4 years, it's over 120 games. So thinking back, like there was only one other like Asian player that I remember, and he was on Pepperdine. His name's Jae Yoon, and we actually just like talked after the game. I was like, kind of like talking about our experiences and just saying like I was like, yeah, I mean, like you're like one of the only other people that kind of like look like me, that we've played against ever. And so I was like, that's incredible, man. Like, congrats. Like, this is great that we've been able to get here. But that feeling
And
is
what did he say
yeah.
to that? I'm curious what his perspective was.
Yeah, I mean, he agreed. He was like, like there's not many of us out here. So like when you're able to see someone that kind of looks like you, like you feel like the need to kind of reach out and like latch onto them because it's like, wow, like I didn't know there's anyone else out there. So
Right, like it'd
it was
be
nice to be able
weird to not talk to him about
exactly.
that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like you feel like you have to talk to him about it. So that was honestly like a really cool experience because I didn't know about the guy before we played him, but after that it was just nice to catch up with him. So, but other than that, yeah, like that experience of just not finding anyone else that looks like you is just it can be deflating, honestly, because it's like you're the only one out there. Like it feels like I wasn't on the court playing myself, but just no one looks like you out there. It's a deflating feeling because like you're isolated. No one else has done what you're doing, and no one else is doing what you're doing. So it's like it's it's a deflating moment. I would say that's the word.
Do you think that it's portrayed incorrectly by the media? Because the perspective that I see a lot out there in a lot
Mhm.
of situations where you have someone in an environment where they are one of the first, they're a trailblazer, it's
Mhm.
sort of glorified. It's like, oh, wow, Reed Myers is the
Yeah.
only Asian American out there. Like, he is the standard bearer. He is a trailblazer. He is a champion.
Mhm.
But it doesn't sound like those were the feelings you were having. You said it was deflating. So, what do you think
Yeah.
about how it's portrayed?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say it was a lot of positive feelings, like, oh
Yeah.
wow, like I'm the first to do this, and like no one ever said that to me or anything. But I remember kind of like talking with my teammates would kind of tell me like, like you're one of the like some of them would say that I was one of the only like people that was Asian that they play basketball with, and I was like, dude, there's no way. Like I'm sure you play with other people that are Asian growing up. They're like, no, like you're really like one of the only ones. And I was like, I mean, that's like kind of crazy.
Mm.
um, so yeah, I mean, like being a trailblazer, I mean, it's difficult. I mean, obviously, I wasn't the one on the court playing myself, but it is a lot of like it is difficult because you feel isolated. You know that there's not many other people like you out there. So you also feel like this immense amount of pressure because people are looking at you. You're the one that stands out. You're the one that sticks out, and you know it. Like I know it. So, um, yeah, I mean, it was difficult.
Did you have moments where you felt like you had too much pressure, let's say, to be a representative?
There were times where I thought so because I knew like when I was even in practice or we have open practices where fans would come in that I kind of stood up for a whole community because I was the only one that was Asian. So there were times where I felt like I had to perform well, I had to do well, both for my sake, but also for you know just Asian basketball players all over because I'm one of the only people that represent them on the court. So there was a lot of pressure at times, and I would come to my mind from time to time, whether it was in practice or even just when I was by myself, thinking like I have to do well because I have to. The connotation of Asian basketball players isn't a positive one. It's I went through it myself of the negative stereotypes. So trying to prove them wrong for Asian basketball players can be a little pressure. Can be a lot of pressure.
That's such a hard thing to do. I mean, it's really hard enough to be a student athlete, to balance your academics with your basketball, to go through the grind of D1 hoops. That's really
Mm-hmm.
hard. Most people can
Yeah.
do it without needing to be a standard bearer. I mean, what is that? It's sort of unfair. And
Mm-hmm.
it seems like you were able to deal with it, but what were some moments for you that were more difficult?
Yeah, I think. I mean, when I was growing up playing basketball, like I never really thought like, oh, I'm the only Asian person, playing basketball. Like there are other people that look like me when I was a really little kid, but And even in middle school, I never really thought about it. It wasn't until I got to high school and I was playing in high school games where, opposing student sections were saying some like crazy stuff to me. And then I was like, oh, like, when I started to figure out that, I look different and people are looking at me differently. Remember one game, like, just kids were that's like, at student sectionals were just on me. They're just like, did you make your shoes before the game? And I was like, bro, like, I'm just trying to hoop. Like, it was like just crazy stuff that they would be saying, or I'd run to the locker room at halftime, and student sections would be like calling me chink, and I'm like, it was like loud, like I was able to hear it running by them. So I remember one time there was like a school supervisor or someone there, like an attendant, and I went up to them. I was like they can't be saying this. Like, you got it. Like, can you do something about it? And then they end up doing like just nothing. They're like, just you kind of have to deal with it. And I was like, okay. So then from then on, it was just kind of like, even when I do speak up, like it was pointless. It was meaningless because no one ever does anything. And I feel like that's how a lot of Asian Americans feel like just in their everyday life when there are issues or racism, because we don't really have like a voice or someone that we can look up to who speaks for us like other communities do. And so in basketball, that's how I kind of felt, because when I did speak up or said something that towards the comments that were said to me, like nothing would be done. So I ended up just having to learn to take it and just move on with it. And it was hard because I was 15, 16 at the time. So by the time I got to college, it was, kind of used to it by then, which is kind of sad to think about. But, it's just the reality of being an Asian American basketball player. You look different. People are going to treat you differently, and you just kind of have to live with it.
You just kind of have to live with it. That's the biggest shame of all.
Mm.
It's not the xenophobic students that are yelling obscenities at you. It's
Mm-hmm.
the school administrators that are doing nothing about it. And it's the culture that's been created where you have to just sort of be like, yeah, all right, I'll deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
it's
those
difficult.
moments got to
So,
be tough, man.
oh, 100%. And it's just hard because even when you speak up, like nothing's done about it. And that's why I wanted to write in the op-ed that that's one of the most difficult things is that, yeah, like you can be, if someone reads my story, they're like, why don't you just speak up and like it all be over? But it was like, even when I did, like nothing's ever done. So that was one of the big moments, a key point that I wanted to write in my op-ed about.
You mentioned to me Jeremy Lin. And of
Hmm.
course, he is a generational talent. He had
Right.
Linsanity. He had the moment,
Yeah.
a breakthrough. I've also
Hmm.
read some of his work and watched some of
Hmm.
his movies. How did that change things for you? Linsanity.
Yeah. So, I mean, at the time, I think it was like 2012. So I was 12 years old. I honestly didn't realize the magnitude at the time. I was just like, I was more like focused on his story. It wasn't even like the way he looked. It was just like, wow, this guy was undrafted, went to Harvard. Literally, like no one knows about him until scoring 38 on Kobe, like at the Garden on ESPN. So it's more for me. It was like, it wasn't even that like he looked like me. It was just like this guy's just doing incredible basketball achievements that no one's achieved before. Um, but then as I got older, I was like, wow, he was actually like a crazy trailblazer for our community. I actually had the chance to meet him when I was in high school. He was on the Hawks and he played the Suns. I knew someone, Kevin Cole was actually working with the Hawks. And so he was able to allow me to meet Jeremy Lin after the game. So I was able to speak with him. I was able to thank him for everything that he's done. But yeah, I mean, look, like as I got older, I was like, Lin Sanity was just a crazy, crazy time because no one's done what he's done. And still to this day, no one's done what he's done. And he was able to provide a sense of hope with his career and his achievements that's like unparalleled. But even then, like I guess it's over a decade since Insanity, and we're still kind of looking for that next Asian American hooper, which is crazy to make it to the NBA. So yeah, I mean, hopefully his case just won't be a slight hiccup. It'll be a lot more common where Asian American basketball players are regularly in the NBA. So, but yeah, I mean, it was a crazy time that looking back, it was amazing to watch.
What did he say to you when you thanked him?
He was just like he was so humble. I think that's everyone always mentions how humble he is. He was like, like it was like no big deal. Like he was just like, of course, like he was just really, really polite, really, really caring. And I told him, about my current. I was committed to Rice at that point, so I told him like I was going down to Houston. And he just told me, like even though it's not a scholarship, like just do everything you can to keep working hard, and like things will kind of fall in your favor with the work that you put in.
It's sort of funny to think of him being like, nah, yeah, no biggie. You're like, hey, thank you for being a generational talent and sparking this movement and being, the voice of our generation of Asian American hoopers. And he's like, yeah, okay, no big deal.
Yeah, he was a super, super nice guy. So yeah, I can't think of anyone honestly better to represent our community than him through basketball.
But now it's time to turn the page, right, to the next generation. That
Right.
insanity. I cannot believe that was 2012. That's 11 years ago.
Yeah,
So
that's crazy.
we turn towards the next generation. You wrote in the final paragraph of your column, you said, I hope by being on Rice, I, a 6-foot, half white, half Japanese Asian American, can provide hope to the next generation of Asian American hoopers. How do you accomplish that?
Yeah, I think with me, something that kind of like stuck out to me is I would work sometimes at summer camps that we had at Rice with the little kids that would come in from the Houston community. And some of those kids happen to be of Asian descent. And so it was kind of a crazy moment. So there'd be times in the season after games where these kids and these families would come up to me after the game and like their parents would tell me, they're like, like, you're my kid's favorite player. And I was like, I didn't even play today. Like, what do you mean I'm your favorite? Like, I'm his favorite player. And so I guess that kind of like stuck out to me because I was like, if I'm able to kind of do that without actually physically touching the court, like me just being at the Division I level can be enough to spark like these kids' hopes, dreams, because there is someone at least that looks like them at a Division I level, like where they're from. And so I never really had that growing up in Phoenix at ASU, U of A. Like obviously no one looked like me, so like you just can't really look up. Like you have to look up to other people who don't look like you, which is perfectly fine. But sometimes it's just helpful to have someone that looks like you because then like people can do it. You can do it. It's feasible. And when you just don't have anyone, it's like if no one else has been able to do it, like how am I supposed to be the one? Like that's a crazy feeling and a crazy amount of pressure because like it's almost like it's you against the world because there's no one else out there that's doing what you're trying to do.
It's amazing to think about little kids being like, hey, you're my favorite player because of who you are, but that's a lot of pressure for
Yeah.
a college kid. So kudos to you for dealing with that pressure. Of course, a moment of reflection for you as you graduate, finish up basketball. You literally set sail on London soon, but tell us what's next for you in the Reed Myers story.
Yeah, definitely. So right now I'm looking to kind of embark on starting my career post basketball. And then on the side, I've been kind of running this t-shirt business called Outside the Bubble, or OTB, where I kind of make creative designs for college athletes using NIL, but with the recent changes that the NCAA implemented. So just kind of make creative designs. I've just been working with some of my teammates at the moment on getting these shirts done, and then we just sell them to whoever is interested in buying them. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
And fans of the podcast, I've got the link in the description. So if you want to support Reed's business, snag a shirt. What do they look like? Give us a little audio description. What's your style?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm really into like the old school vintage wrap tees. So those are kind of styles I kind of go for a little bit. I mean, obviously you have to use, pictures of the athlete. So I like to use, game photos as well as like kind of like, action shots, but also like non-action shots where it's like they're posing or like they're reacting to an emotional play. So with those designs, I kind of have a background and then a format of the photos and then kind of throw in a little edit to kind of make it a little bit give it a little bit of a vintage look.
Sounds sweet. I'm going to be a customer. So
awesome.
we'll keep spreading the word for you, Reed. Last one for you. I'm a travel nut. You're going to London later this week. Are you a Ted Lasso fan?
Oh yeah, I've been keeping up with this series, so I love that show. It's one of my favorites. Gotta watch it every Wednesday.
All right, who's going to win the Premier League this year in Ted Lasso? Will it be Richmond, West Ham, or the Field?
It's gotta be either Richmond or West Ham, but gotta go with Ted on this one, so I'll say Richmond.
There we go. I'm going to go a little funkier. I'm going to say West Ham wins it, but then it gets like vacated on a technicality, and Richmond slides in. Ooh, I think it'll get a little funky. Oh, Reed, it's been awesome to have you on the pod. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for attacking it with with energy, right? And opening up, because I know that's not easy to do for a lot of people. So I appreciate it, Reed.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Thank you so much for giving me this platform and opportunity to speak on it. So I really appreciate that. So thank you.
Of course, wishing you all the best, Reed. That's been Reed Myers on The Mental Game. Reed, bon voyage.
Awesome. Thank you.
Really appreciate Reed's time and his honesty here on the Mental Game podcast. I think it's interesting to juxtapose what we see in the media, which is so often, this guy's a shining star, the voice of his generation, and representing all Asian Americans, and making it sound so glorious, with the reality, which is what Reed told us, which is, God, that felt deflating to be the only one. God, it was frustrating to have all these people yell obscenities at me and nothing get done about it. Coaches not call me back. Scouts write bad reports on me just because of how I look, not how I play. It's really frustrating, and I think it's important to tell these stories. Really, really appreciate Reed, and hope you enjoyed Reed's appearance on The Mental Game. As always, I appreciate your support. Make sure you like, rate, subscribe to the pod, and help me spread the good word. All right, as always, I'm Sam Brief, bidding you adieu from the home studio in Chicago. This has been the Mental Game Podcast. Make sure you take care of yourself and others, and I will speak with you next time.